So this is BT Hallis for Project Checkpoint, celebrating 30 years of border crossings. And today is the 3rd of February 2026. Please could you tell me your name and how it is spelt?
Yeah, I'm Gary Funck. It's spelled G-A-R-Y. I've got an F-U-N-C-K. But as I'm from Germany, it's pronounced not Funk, but Funk.
Thank you. Please could you describe what you look like?
Yeah, I'm 54 years old, or young, as you would like to. I have short blonde hair. I have a regular figure, a normal average figure, and I like to wear not too colorful clothes at the moment. It's a blue sweater and a blue shirt.
Thank you. And could you tell me where you are at the moment?
Oh, at the moment I'm sitting in the living room of my home on an old dike in North Frisia, and I'm watching over the land. It's quite cold outside.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And where were you born and in which year?
I'm born in 1971 in the hospital in our county capital, Husum, at the North Sea. Yeah.
Thank you. So perhaps to start with, Gary, we could talk a little bit more about where you are and why that matters to your work.
Yeah, I'm situated in a rural area of northern Germany, which used to be part of Denmark, actually, until it's struggling in the 19th century, but as a result, this area is quite multicultural. So we have three nationalities or cultural nationalities living here, which are the Germans, of course, the Danish, and the Frisians as well, who were maybe the first settlers here, or have been here all the time. We don't know exactly. And so this multilingual and multicultural setting was reason for, or the base for, the foundation of the North Frisian Theatre. 10 years ago. In May it's 10 years ago, and I was one of those who tried to build up this theatre. Have been trying to build up this theatre since 10 years. I think it's like every theatre, you always have to fight and struggle a little bit. And but this multicultural setting is framing our whole work. So we see ourselves not only, we use the Frisian language as main language, but I do not think we are nailed down on being just Frisian. We also do theatre in our neighbor languages. We always try to connect them, and there's a little bit, or it may be kind of aim just to show that we are not Danish or German or Frisian or new immigrants, but we are a melting pot. So every single one of us is a bit of that, a bit of that, a bit of that. So I would always call myself maybe a Frisian, but normally for me it's more regional matter where I'm coming from. But if I look into my inside, I will detect some Danish aspects, some Frisian aspects, some German, which brings me to the question, what is Danish in this area, or what is Frisian? Or is it just a kind of mind map which is put onto you from outside, you know? People are always following official rules, because if you are belonging to the Danish minority, you have to sign, of course, the Danish school system, and you are always asked to kind of loyalty, something like that. And so you have to consider yourself to be Danish now. From this point, you are sending your children into a Danish playground or a Danish school later. We do not have Frisian schools, but we have German schools north on the border in Denmark. So it's a kind of equal system, and it's more or less it's the same. And I always found it quite ridiculous. You know, we are all come we were all born in the same hospital. We grew up as children, we were playing football. We all spoke the same language as children, which was Low German, which is a regional dialect, kind of between Frisian and English, something like that, or between Frisian and German. And it's the same. Low German is a bit of Frisian, a bit of Danish, a bit of German. It's like a Creole language, And later in life, they decided, or parents decided, now you are Danish because you went going to that school, and you are German because you're in a normal school. And as Frisian, you have no school, but later in life you can join several associations, and it's like a process. You are not born as member of a cultural minority in this region. It's different in other regions, I know. But here it's more or less a decision of the family, of your parents, of your own career, what you think, where are you going to. If you are belonging to the Danish system, your student fees in Denmark are paid by the Danish kingdom. So these are all factors which, of course, have influence on your decision or of your parents. And we were always aiming the other way. It's just we are all a bit of everything, and for me it's a bit like a pre-European step. So the next step would be, but you are a German citizen, or in Denmark you are a Danish citizen, or maybe you know the same in Britain. You say you are the 5 nations, but in the end there are many people saying, but you are British, so we are a citizen of Great Britain. But and now we departed from course of Brexit. But for me, the next thing, but anyway, we are all in Europe, you know, and all the problems we have, which shape a bit our, I think, identity is also shaped by influences and problems from outside, which you have to solve as a community. And our community is now very much Europe, because all the problems cannot be solved by small Germany, even smaller Denmark, or the smallest Friesland. Yeah. So that's the field where we try to work.
So I'm wondering, when you were growing up, when you were a young person, can you remember any moments where you started to realize that there would be diverting, your friends might be going off somewhere else because of their family choices?
As a very young child, this was no real... It didn't affect me, but I grew up in a world of many languages. I still remember it was a small settlement where I grew up, quite near to the water, and people were, I think that's 6-7 houses, many old people living there, and we were not many children. It was in the 70s, of course, and there was, it was a little bit like Babylon. You just heard many languages, and it was quite normal as a child, you know. It was a normal status, a normal thing to do, to have several languages. When I left my home region later, or when I came to the secondary schools and all the later stuff, everything was in standard German. And maybe I was wondering a bit, and I still remember in grammar school we were not allowed to use different languages on the playground and in the school breaks, and people came, talk German, and but it was a little bit of fun thing. You know, we were children. It wasn't too serious. It was never a big topic for my parents or my grandparents. My mother isn't coming from the region. She's a Second World War refugee, or her family, and so she didn't speak the languages, the regional languages at all. So there was always a bit of High German or Standard German element in it. But it was just natural. Nobody talked about it. I know my grandparents were very keen on maintaining the Frisian form of Low German. And it's a bit like in Scotland, for example, Scots and Gaelic. You have certain areas in North Frisia where you use the Frisian language, and you have certain areas where you use Low German, which is based on the Frisian basement, yeah. And my grandparents were always quite keen on maintaining it, and I found old tapes where my grandfather spoke, you know, poems to recording poems in Low German. So they were a little bit, yeah, trying to maintain a dying language. But as I said, that didn't affect me very much. It all came later in life, I would say. When I was in university, you were away from home, and there I detect, oh, it's possible to study your own home culture. I didn't know about that when I was a child or a youngster. I think nobody here in the area knew about the thing that you can study our culture officially on a university and make your degree in it. So I found that interesting, and I tried to do my degree there, but later I changed. But nevertheless, this affected me quite a lot because of, yeah, it gives you a kind of, wouldn't say pride, but a new perspective on, not only on your own culture, but of course on your childhood, on your time as a youngster. I looked on it from a different perspective, and not being, before I always said, yeah, you know, I'm coming from the countryside, which was, I was born 71, so my wild years were the 80s, and we always tried to drive to Hamburg every couple of months, and it was like, I was in Hamburg, and a big city with millions of people, and you always was a little bit, yeah, ashamed that you are from the countryside, and you always were a little bit behind. And of course this changed, because when you study Frisian philology, everything is great. You know, you don't have to be ashamed. You have to be, there's a value in it, and it's something very special. And there are many people living in big cities, but there are not so many people living in very rural areas behind the sea dike. So yeah, this made me, later in life, it made me a bit more happy about my childhood.
Perhaps you could talk about how this feeling of pride fed into you starting your company.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that this feeling of pride directly led to the foundation of this company. But I started to work when I was in university studying Frisian philology. I started to organize rock concerts in the Frisian language, cultural youth exchanges. I was very much engaged in the use of European nationalities, which is an umbrella organization for lingual or ethnic minorities in Europe. I did all this stuff, and of course I also started to do theater, and just remember, there are so many things you can do in a small language. And then after I did all these things, I was employed by one of the Frisian main organizations, just as a, what would you say, artistic director or cultural manager, just for doing things. And again, I organized concerts, all these things. We made theater, and then I started to do things where all people said, that's too big, stop it. We are not so many people. There are only a few thousand speakers of Frisian in North Frisia, for example. And you can do these things in English or German, but not in Frisian. It's not possible. And we always tried out, and I would say in 8 of 10 cases it is possible. And the result maybe is not the same as when doing it in German, Danish, English, I don't know. But it was something of great value, I always thought. And so I thought we should get more professional in doing it, so I studied theater in Germany. Later I did it in England as well, at Rosebruford College, but that was a bit later. And so we grew into it, you know. You always, it's like the university and all, the studies of theater and art give you tools to work with. You have a base, a material, which is your culture, and now you have new tools working with your culture. And I thought, okay, we need an own organization only doing art with the language and not doing teaching as well. You have to focus on this single thing. And of course it's a financial aspect. If you have your own organization, you can ask for money. We were quite successful in the first year, so we were granted public subsidies. And yeah, it was quite a normal local theater company working internationally with border crossings, for example, with Danish companies, with Dutch, we shouldn't say Dutch, and other companies from the Netherlands, which are Frisian, not Dutch. And yeah, that's and the ball started to run, the snowball started to run. After Corona, after COVID, everything is a bit more difficult, especially when living in a rural area, because many artists left the region. Not only artists, but you know, you cannot do a big, of course you can, but usually we do not do big productions only with artists, you know, technicians, staff, help us, it's a big team. And many parts of this team are not available in the countryside anymore, or not as easy as it was before the pandemic. So we are still struggling with it, and I do not know how long we will survive in the future. I think, yeah, circumstances haven't improved since COVID, I think, for small artistic companies in the countryside.
Can you describe what you would need for it to improve?
More stuff, more money. More speakers. It's like how can I? Before COVID, I don't know why, but it was possible for every new idea. It was possible to get enough people, and of course, you had to talk, you had to persuade, you had to. Sometimes it wasn't about money. It was always you had a great idea, and people came. Ah, oh, come on, Gary, not again, not again. Yeah, but let's try it one more time, one more time. And it was always a kind of, come on, it would be the first time that we are trying to do this. And would you like to miss it? Really? No, they didn't. But then after the pandemic, it's like a car, a very big truck, which was always running because of its speed. And when you are successful, in the moment you are successful, you have to write and to ask for money for the next project, and you have to collect the people. They are watching the current productions and wow, fantastic, and I like it, and I want to be part of the next thing. So it's yeah, like an old steam engine or an old heavy lorry, which is just, I don't know the physical expression for it in English, and of the masses, the impulse of the masses, and so it was running. But in COVID it stopped. Like the whole cultural life, I think throughout Europe, more or less stopped. And yeah, now it's very difficult to bring it on speed again and to reach that speed we had before the pandemic. And I think because you need, at the very first moment, you need many people to bring it on speed. Not only to bring it running and to make it running, but to bring it on speed. You know, that you have this magnetic effect again, that it's being so successful that you get enough media and enough ads that our state government is asking, oh, do you need any money? It's a great idea. And it was a little bit like that before the pandemic. We did not always ask for money. Sometimes people asked us if they can from the state government in Schleswig-Holstein. They said, "Oh, that's a nice idea, and we are thinking about not only giving you project money, but paying your salaries on a regular basis." And so, if we look on all these things, everything is fine. But and it's the same over here. The money isn't the same, hasn't the same value anymore because of inflation and these things. But we do not get more money. No, it's still the same sum. It's not. We are not the only ones with this problem. And there's a economic decay throughout Germany at the moment. So we still get the same money, but it's not the same value anymore. And the stuff, artists are going to Hamburg, to Berlin, or I hope some are coming back from America. We just do not know. There's kind of fluctuation at the moment. Denmark is quite a big, I don't want to say there's a rivalry, but as many youngsters, when after they made their Danish school exam here in Germany, as I told you, normally they go to Denmark for studying because everything is paid in Denmark. And normally they stay in Denmark. And that's a pity because, of course, we need young speakers of the language. And there aren't many speakers left in the region. And of course, then you need people who like to do arts. And yeah, and that's getting a problem more and more.
Could you talk about your role, Gary? What would you consider your role day to day?
That's a very nice, very good question, because later this day I will have a discussion with my colleagues, because I got a feeling that I'm always getting more and more away from my official role. Normally I'm doing the program, so I'm organizing the program. I'm writing plays, or I'm translating plays, and I'm directing. Sometimes I'm acting, but there it's not, I do not want to act. I have a training, half a training. It's for I studied theater education once, and so there you have a half of acting training. So you could say it's enough for a rural area, but we shouldn't see it like that. No, but in a moment it's more or less, I feel like a politician, and I have to do, I don't know, Michael knows it, Lucy knows it, it's more and more writing proposals, going to discussions, presenting ideas in front of others, other organizations, other persons, other institutions. And doing art and doing theater is becoming more and more a side thing I have to do beside my work, with extra hours, which are not paid in the end, as we do not have the money to pay them. And I feel more and more like a hobby theater maker. And my main profession is organizing the whole company, kind of, working organization, organigrams, all these things. Working with, we have a board, as we are in, how do you call it? No, not an economical association. It's publicly, and so there is a voluntarian board, and they are. Some are interested in theater, some are not, some are minority politicians working as a politician in parliament. And so you always have to bring them together. And then if you have an idea and you need money for it, you always try to, come on, just this time. But after you've reached the point to start with the program, you feel a little bit totally burned out because all your power is away already just for bringing it on the way, and so others have to do it. And I don't like that idea, and we have to make maybe monitoring a benchmark, but these are words from economic systems. I don't like that, but we just have to think about where there might be better ways of doing theater with the staff and this group of people at the moment. Perhaps there is a better form of organization, a better form of funding, a better form of maybe doing 1 year no theater, only working every second year. I don't know how it's in Britain. I think the whole system of funding is different. You have the Arts Council in Britain. And if you are funded by the Arts Council, you won, you know, then it's great. And if not, there is nothing much left. And here we get our projects funded, which is project money, and we got our salaries funded, which is institutional, and we get it every year again and again. But the problem is with our projects, so every production is a project. So if we do 4 or 5 productions, we write a project proposal 2 years ago. We have to ask for it 2 years ago. So I always have to decide what will I do in 2 years. Personally, I would say if after work my main topic at the moment is just ice in Minnesota. And I would love to do anything with anything in any connection to it. Maybe interesting that North Frisia during the Third Reich was a region in Germany with the highest rate of the NSDAP. So there are parallels of Trump and North Frisia, and maybe we have instruments, or we are in a region which is just good for examining the mechanism of fascism. How did it happen? Just from farmers want to be recognized, and all this long way, which led them to Hitler 33. But I cannot do it, just because if I want to do a project now about ice in Minnesota, I had to ask for it 2 years ago. So of course we always have possibilities to change projects, but it's a long process of bureaucracy, and after you finish it, it's a bit like now I worked with a project 3-4 months just for getting it all organized, and then you feel a bit burned out. The fire is over, and you should use this energy for doing arts and not for doing all this administrative stuff. Yeah, I hope we can find a way for improving that in the future, because it's really stopping us, I think.
I'm wondering, Gary, who is in your company? Who are the people you work with?
Some of them are my oldest friends. So we are officially employed as 3 people at the moment. It's changing from year to year a bit. Sometimes we have 5, even had 6 once, but we have a lot of people working for us on a contract basis for single projects or specific work. And some of them are friends I grew up with almost. And some of them are people it's a current development that this region, again, something which started to happen after COVID, become more, and we have a shift of population. Of course, it's a seaside, and it's a touristic region, but the development in the last years was that everything has happened so rapidly, and houses are changing. You know, they are empty for 2 months, and 2 months later, somebody died, house empty, and you call your friends, hello, you know, Auntie Zina's house is empty now, and you, as a child, you always said you would love to come up again, but now it's all bought up by retired Germans, people from South Germany or from the capitals, and they bring up their culture. That's quite nice. And at first we all said, oh, it's a big problem. And but to be honest, many of them, maybe because they are all those people who are successful in life, many of them at least, and so they changing your life when you are in a certain age. It's not that easy. So you have to be of this nature, a little bit of adventure nature, and so they're quite creative people arriving here. And instead of just seeing this as a problem, how could we maintain our 2,000 years old fusion culture? And of course, in the beginning I was caught in this thinking as well, but now we are, it's like fresh blood for the theatre, and even if it's changing, so the result won't be old-fashioned North Frisian regional theatre, but as the region is changing, we should change as well, and that's working. But of course they are all old, or older. You cannot, if you want to do Romeo and Juliet, just one example, and Julia is 75 years old, it's possible, but it's not the same as it was written by Shakespeare, or it was thought by Shakespeare. Of course you can do it, and we do it, not Shakespeare now, but we try to we try to change everything, or adapt it, and it's I love it. It's quite great, because I'm not used to have so many people who like to do something, who are asking, oh, I heard you're doing a theater group, and of course you also get people in a rural area with some experience maybe in theater or film. So that's quite nice as well. But as we are just in this process, in this progress of adapting to the new circumstances and to make the best of it. I only know the old way, as we did it before the pandemic, does not work anymore at all. So maybe the problem is a chance. I want to go in that direction, rather than keeping to the old things and see the whole thing dying, I think.
Could you talk about when you first heard of border crossings or met someone from border crossings?
Michael was my professor at Ruth Bruford College. It was in 2017. It was my British degree, and when he was my professor at the college, and then he heard that I was involved in, of course he's mainly working with indigenous groups, and I was working with autochthonous European minorities, and it's not totally the same, but there are similar aspects, and so we came into contact beside the study thing, and I was in the jury of a film festival in Italy. Wasn't it 2017 as well? Something about that. 16, 17, 18, I don't know exactly anymore. I think it was 2017, and it's the Babel Film Festival in Sardinia, and it's, I think, currently the only European festival on minority languages, or on movies and films which are shot in minority languages. And so I had the freedom to, or I was asked if I could invite interesting people for the film festival. And I said, yeah, my professor, he's also working with, he's doing theater with indigenous groups. And he was the artistic director of a Shakespeare festival in a Native American community. So that's quite special, and would fit into a Babel Film Festival quite well. But he was hindered, he had no time, and so he said Lucy, and so I got to know Lucy, who is originally coming from Yorkshire. and I was always interested in Yorkshire. I'm a big fan of Britain. I spent all my private time in Britain, Northern England or Cornwall, and so I was quite interested in Yorkshire because if I go on the dike, so just nearly if I watch out of my window, there are some things between it. There's a dike and there's some windmills, but just in theory, if my house would be high enough, I could see Yorkshire or Northumberland at the horizon. And I always loved that impression that Northsea isn't something dividing. It was the highway in the Middle Ages, the highway. You know, it was much easier from here to come to England than to come to Hamburg or to Copenhagen. And parts of my family originate from a small village called Hollingstedt. You won't know. But the church of Hollingstedt is said to be the old English storehouse from the times of Canute the Great. So, you know, who was King of England and King of Denmark. And so he needed small harbors for building up the connection. So, since 1,000 years, we are very closely, to be honest, Anglo-Saxon, they are all coming from here. And I just now heard that Frisians and Jutes are the same. So, we are so closely connected. And at that time, Brexit was done. It wasn't done, but the decision was made, and we all knew. I always grew up because this was it's officially occupied until 1990, Schleswig-Holstein by the Brits. So we grew up with a lot of British influence in that time. For example, our regional television, NDR, Norddeutscher Rundfunk, North German Broadcasting Company, was built up by the BBC after the war, and BFBS, which was the British, was the military sector, a bit of the BBC. And it was normal, when I was a child, it was normal that later, after 10 o'clock in the evening, to watch in the third program, which always was, it's like Channel 4, to show just English series or English films with German subtitles. It totally stopped now. It stopped decades ago. But it always gave you a feeling of it's a part of Britain as well. And we had a lot of school exchange. I went to school in England when I was a child in Kidderminster and once again in Bewdley, which is also Kidderminster, all in inner circle of Birmingham. And so when I met Lucy, she said, it's a pity. I always thought it's the closest ally of Germany is Great Britain. And the closest ally of Schleswig-Holstein is Great Britain, and the closest ally of North Frisia. Our languages are nearly the same. They used to be 1,000 years ago. As you can hear, it's not the same anymore. But it was so unimaginable. But it happened. And so we said, let's do theatre together, just to show that that the North Sea isn't something which has divided us the last 1,000 years, but which has connected us and still does until today. And I truly believe it still does. There is, we just got, I don't know if maybe it's not a thing in Great Britain, but in our local media, it's a great thing since a couple of weeks. There was a message in a bottle arrived here from Britain. So somebody threw it into the water somewhere in Yorkshire. As it was thrown in the area of Whitby, and it arrived here. That's a normal thing. But it was in the bottle were the ashes of a died person. So if a family mother died, and the family put the ashes into a bottle. I don't think it's legal, but they did it and threw it into the North Sea, and it arrived here. It was found on a small islet where only 20-30 people are living, And these 20, 30 people do now enjoy a very close relation to a family in Yorkshire, and the local newspaper is writing about every couple of days what's happening, and it's a problem. You are not allowed, it's the ash of a human being. And the funeral laws in Germany are quite strict. You are not allowed, like you are in other countries of Europe or worldwide, to put the ash of your dead mother or father or whatever in your living room. That's not allowed here. It has to be buried. And you cannot bury it in your private garden. It has to be buried on the official cemetery. I just know in America or in Dutch you can put it on a shelf, but it's not allowed here. And so, you know, they are now sitting there with the ash, and can you set it by post? And maybe it will be picked up by the family, or they are discussing to do a common ritual, maybe putting it just out of the bottle into the water. But I just love this idea. Something was thrown into the water, and it's like a personal connection, a personal wire, but which only we and the East English can enjoy, which connects us together. And you know, internet, maybe one day, sometimes it's not working. Telephone sometimes is not working. Broadcasting sometimes is not working. But the North Sea will be there. It's been there since the last, I think, 8,000 years. And I hope it will be there for the next 8,000 years. So why not use this very specific way of communication? And if it's just mentally, you know. You have ebb and flood. So if you say the flood is a big wave, this wave is always coming from England. You know, it's like as if we push and throw, push and pull, the same thing. We are working something out together. We just do not use it. Or we do not use it enough. We should use it much more than we do now. Just because of Brexit. I still hope that there will be a time when Britain will be back in the European Union, or when the European Union just is reorganized in a way so that the Brits are saying, now we want to be part again. And I don't like this after the UK left. Of course, they did not leave with a lot of, I come back, and we'll see you next year. No, it was leaving for always. And the European Union made the mistake of just kicking them out a bit. And I was, it won't last for, come on. In 10 years, you will sit on a table, so do not destroy too much China now, because we will need a good, we all need a good mood to come together again in the future. Yeah.
I was just listening to you talking about the sea, and I was thinking about the project you did with Lucy, and wondering how it relates, those ideas about the water.
Very much. I think that's the water idea was a catalyst of the whole thing. When we met in Sardinia, I still remember it was winter, shortly before Christmas, and when I went to Sardinia, friends of mine spent the winter in Sardinia 1 year before, and I said, summertime, it's summertime, you can swim and bath and it's 25 degrees, so forget all your winter clothing, just come with shorts. And I did not come with shorts, it was a film festival, of course, I needed a suit and all these things, but it was bitterly cold, it was 2-3 degrees, and then I met Lucy at that time, and we had this idea about North Sea, and it was really difficult weather conditions, and we all did not come home because no planes were, there was snow everywhere in Europe and the airports were closed and all these things. So from the beginning, the whole project was very much impressed by weather and nature, and yeah, I do not know whether this was the main the main push behind the whole thing, but it's very early in the process we decided for Richard Bean, and a play which wasn't produced in Germany before. So I thought, okay, that would be nice. If the Frisians are the same, the first ones in Germany who are producing this play, and it's about a fishing trawler who sings. And yeah, there's much in it, you know, the fishing trawler on the sea, the British thing which sings in the middle of Europe and Britain. And I remember in our local newspapers, it was recognized in public television, and Schleswig-Holstein magazine, so state television. And yeah, so there was an impact. It was a topic in any case. And people said, yeah, but these big fishing trawlers, we do not use them in North Frisia. So I found it was funny that people saying, yeah, great, it's all North Sea and connecting, but you always find people who focus on the differences, even if they are so tiny, if it's the size of a fishing trawler. Yeah, of course we do coastal fishing. It's Waddensee here, so our fishers normally come back after 24 hours, or maybe they spend the night on an island, but they are not away. And if the boat, of course, it's dangerous as well, but not as dangerous as the deep sea fisherman thing. But anyway, you know, it's fishing in the North Sea, using a language which is very close to our language, especially if you have the Yorkshire dialect, is very close to modern North Frisian, very close. And we once visited the James Herriot Museum in Thirsk, and there was a very nice elderly lady, and she was talking in Yorkshire dialect. She was saying, and if you go upstairs, there's a small knob, and if you find the button, you can press the button, and you can hear Tricky Woo barking behind the sofa. But I'm telling you this now, and you cannot understand a single word because I'm using the Yorkshire dialect. And we said, no problem. We could understand every single word. And there was another family that said, we are from Kent. We did not understand anything of it. And I said, why? It's so clear. Eh? How can it be? So these are fantastic, not fantastic, but these are very specific aspects, very connecting. But there are still people think, it's not the same type of fishing trawler. I do not understand why you could do this in Frisian. I cannot see the similarities. You just wonder. So I found that, and these were no people who did not want us to work with the British or to have cooperations with English theatre companies. No, it's nice people, normally nice people, but maybe there's a automatic impulse, and I was just to watch on differences. So some people are so, and other people are so, and I found that quite interesting. And since then, we tried to do a second project, again using the North Sea as a connecting element, and again a play situated at the coast of Yorkshire, and we wanted to do it site specifically over here in a small cafe at the beach. So at least in your mind you have free sight over to the original setting of the play. It did not work out later because of illness and the stuff, but anyway, We it's too early to talk about continuity, but my plan is that we have these cooperations with English companies on a regular basis, and I would love in the next step to come over with our production and maybe doing a bilingual production, Frisian English, with short titles, for example, and present it here and present it in Yorkshire, for example, or Northumberland or East Anglia, or wherever. Yeah, sorry, I just came away from your question a little bit.
No, it's perfect, Gary. Don't worry. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that play?
I found it fantastic. I loved it, but of course, it's there are differences to our lifestyle, of course. So it's fascinating because it is something new, which evolved from similar circumstances. You know, we have both communities living at the sea. Britain is an island, but North Frisia consists, which is now mainland, used to be an island 150 years ago, for example. So it's this area is a field of small islands and islets, which have been diked together in a centuries-long process. So there is an island mentality, and different things evolved out of this island mentality, but you still can see parallel developments. And I just find that unbelievably interesting, and it's still connected by the water. And you know, water is always bringing movement. I cannot describe it. It's hard. Everybody who grew up at the coast would say the same thing. I cannot live very far away from the coast, and now I'm living, what is it, 3,000 meters from the water, and there's nothing between us, only fields. And people ask me, so you go walking at the beach every day? No, I never do. So when you've been at the seaside last 6 months ago, what? I need the feeling. And it's the feeling of being connected to the world. That's the main thing. It's not about fresh air. Of course, I love fresh air, and it's nice, and there are birds and animals and whales, the whole stuff. All people like when spending the holidays at the seaside. But that's not the point. The point is that I feel connected. It's like having broadband internet, but it's on a meter basis. It's somewhere here, and I cannot describe it. But it's away at the moment when I'm away from the water. And it's not the same with rivers. And of course, it's all a mental thing. But rivers they are organized. You know, sometimes they are stopped, they are cut off. But the sea is a medium transferring ideas from one coast to the other. And I just do not want this to be stopped. And this is the main motivation for working with Border Cross and for working with Lucy again. As I told you, we saw each other end of last year and decided we will have a video conference within the next weeks for starting a new project. And I hope we can finish this project. Maybe it might also be an alternative to follow up the last project which we were needed to stop. We'll see. But normally, you know, if you come with fresh ideas, you do not want to warm up the old thing. We will see. We will see. But it will definitely be connected to the water. I think that's the thing. For me, it's my main motivation when dealing with British issues is being connected by the water.
Would you like to say anything about the Centre Cannot Hold in Belfast?
I wasn't that much involved. I remember I know the whole thing, of course. I participated in a video discussion once, and of course I read things, and I think I wrote something, and yeah, but at that point it already was an issue and a topic everybody knew about, wasn't it? Yeah, it was like, again, water. If you allow me just thinking of water, it was like a big wave coming. You saw it at the horizon, but nobody tried to stop. Yeah, there were some who tried, but not enough people. No government tried to stop it. And now we can see this. It was it 8 years ago? 6, 7, 8 years ago, something like that. The center cannot hold. Now I would say, is there any center left? Is there any center left? At least the center is melting away. So, yeah. Sad thing. Very sad thing. And what gives me hope is that to every movement is starting a contra movement. So I hope there will be a unification again, so people go to the center in time, before everything collapses. What we are watching in America, okay, we do not have to talk about that right now, everybody knows it, but we just can see how rapidly things can get so worse, so worse, and so bad that you cannot fix it anymore without a catastrophe. And I'm so worried that we are running into a catastrophe. And from all sides, from America, from Russia, and from inside, and yeah, and there is no center anymore. There's just no center. In Britain, Reform Party, Nigel Farage, would you call it the center? No, surely not. But isn't it in polls the strongest party at the moment? Horrible, if I'm allowed to say it here on this place. But I think it's horrible. It's the same with AfD in Germany. It's the strongest party. Horrible. For heaven's sake, who is voting for them? I don't know why. So these powers, which it's not rational. There is no ratio in it. Voting for these, they are destroying. It's destructive. So why are people doing it? And that was the aim of this project. The center cannot hold. And they were true. They were just true. But there were no. What we know, we did not find recipes against it, or the recipes weren't followed. It's the most interesting thing is that people run like lemmings, that we run into decay, and we know it. So why do not just stop and turn around? And you can ask religions, why not? If you look for it in Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, it's always about the same thing. The religion is telling you the right way. Love. It's something to do with love, with community, with mutual help and support. But we do not act like that. Sometimes we do, and a small number is doing, but the majority of the people does not act like this during most time of their life. And that's moving us away from the center, which is maybe the magnetic pole in the middle, which is always, what is a center? It's a point which brings us together. You know, the marketplace, the forum romanum, the mental forum, the political forum romanum should be the center. And interesting is we also talked about that the center is moving. You know, that if so it's always a question of perspective, and it's like everything, always relative, like time, and is the center. But if you don't look on it on a meter basis, but much more real or much more materialistic, then of course it's a political center, and that's the middle. If you do far right, the far left, and if you do the cross point, that's somewhere in the middle is the center. But it's not as easy. It's not that easy as it's described sometimes. You cannot separate the political center from the human center, from the spiritual center. It all fits together. Maybe it's a personal information, but very late in life I got baptized. I got christened a couple of months ago. I was never christened, which is quite unusual in this area. And now I'm asked, Gary, you believe in God? Not really. For me, God is the whole, is everything. So the sum of everything might be God, but I do not think it's a thinking, nice old man thing. How can I help? But what I like is a ritual, and it's as old as people are, and as living in a small. It's not even a village. Our community. It's 300 people living here in a greater area, but following a communal ritual once a week, or in a certain temporal etaps and steps, in temporal steps, just following rituals, is as old as community. So from the beginning, communities did spiritual rituals, which is a kind of center again. I do not talk about church in general. I do not talk about, of course, every religion is having some mistakes and some. That's not the point. The point is meeting, gathering around a common spiritual idea, and that's forming community. And that's for me, I detected that's the center. It's the common place, and then we come back to theater, of course. If you look on the Dionysius, the first theater plays in Greek, and we just do not know what happened before that. So when people were drawing pictures in caves 100,000 years ago, did they do this within a communal ritual? So was it done as a community or only by a single person? We just do not know about that. But we know they did shamanic practices, so there were common rituals, and maybe that's missing right now because of internet, or just too many people and broadcasting, and we do not meet as a whole community anymore, only parts of it. Still remember, I was a local politician quite long, and a member of the county parliament for 10 or 15 years, and even head of culture and all these stuff. And normally nobody's interested. You know, we have the county council, which is a big hall, an assembly hall, and there are plenty of seats for spectators. And maybe 2 of these seats are used, and 200 seats are empty. And nobody's really interested. And that's the feeling of you doing politics, which nobody. But if it's missing, okay, the hospital is closed today. Yeah, because they all slept in the county council and sort of just made mistakes. Then, of course, it's boiling up again. But then we had, it's a similar thing. The big state theater was going to shut down. And it's paid by all the counties in the state of Schleswig-Holstein. So we do not, as it's a rural state, we do not only have the main theaters in the big cities like Kiel, but we also have a big, with opera, symphonic orchestra. That's quite a German thing, you know. You always have these, it's all employed and it's public service. And we have these things for the rural areas as well. So they're traveling around all the time. And I love the idea. That's because it's people say, oh, it's so old-fashioned. It's not that old-fashioned because culture is coming to the people. And it's always been here like that. because the circumstances, geographic and political and demographic circumstances always were so that we needed a theater coming to the people. And it was going to shut down because some counties, one of them, the county of North Frisia, was going to stop their contribution. And then you had a point that people came to the assembly hall, to the county council. And there were no riots, of course, not because of theatre. But it went a bit in that direction. So angry elderly ladies especially had. I loved it. But you had this energy. You know, when this assembly, and I just still remember my speech and fighting for the theater, and it was like, I don't know, like a tribune in old Rome, and people were cheering and yes, and so right, and then the assembly was closed, and we made a decision that we do not stop our contribution. And the hall doors opened, people went out and met on the space in front of the county hall, and people went together to cafes and pubs, and friendships were built up. And at that moment I said, that's how it should work. You need topics which people are interested in, but then you need this common process of decision finding with all, and not you have rulers and victims. No, with all together. And like in a football game, the cheering, it's all part of it. And there we made politics, not for the people, but with the people. And I know it sounds like a phrase, and it's used by politicians every day in television. But I do not talk about this theoretical thing. It's a very physical experience. It's the smell of sweat. It's the energy. Maybe even when people are angry and laugh and all these emotions, and a chairman who is not able to, with his hammer, silence, please, silence. And something is happening nobody is able to control. But however, by discussion, by understanding, by the will of everybody finding a solution, you have not only a solution in the end, but a wonderful experience of community. And I think we have to find a way for getting this back in everyday life, just for handling the normal life together. And that's all about. I think that's the main importance of theatre, creating common experience for actors, for everybody who's in the hall at that moment, in the venue. Yeah.
So I can see that event was very uplifting for you. I'm wondering if there are any other, either in theatre or the arts or in other realms, groups who you see are doing something that you think is the way forward, who inspire you to keep going.
Yeah, there are many groups, but you have the fireworkers in every village here. You have the sports club, the hunters, the fishers. But in my childhood, or even earlier in life, and if I look on my parents and grandparents and the whole village community, we lived in we call it Koch. A polder, in Netherlands it's called polder. It's an area of sea ground which has been regained and just protected by a high dike, so the water cannot reach it anymore. So living in it's a bit like, as I told you, it's island, a bit of island mentality. And in Oldgrass, which was this small settlement of my childhood, everybody was done together. And it wasn't the case that family A is playing tennis in their garden while family B is playing mini golf in the garden, and family C is just having a two-person choir. No, it was done together. Birthdays were celebrated together. It was like a big, not like a big family, but it was a community. And this stopped today. So there are many communities, but they do not interact too much. So again, it's a community working individually, more or less. It's only a part of the community, but not the whole community. And I do not know quite currently where there are communities where I think everything is so as I would put it, at a whole, without being forced to do that. And maybe we just need this a certain force from outside. You know, maybe everything is just too good at the moment. Everything is safe. We know what to eat the next day. If we are feeling lonely, we have a television set. We can chat on internet. There are social media platforms which are all hindering us from feeling a kind of urgency to interact physically in the community. So yeah, I would more or less not. During the pandemic, everything was shut off a bit, and no tourists here, and it was quite empty. The whole landscape was quite empty, and old people, like the same, like in Britain, old people were worried of leaving the house, and then suddenly, because they were forced to do it, communities started again. So people interacted. Programs were built up by grassroots activities to support and help each other. Who is from the village driving to the town today for buying something to eat? Okay, Auntie Lucy is wishing that, Granny B is on the, and it worked without being organized from above, and I love that. This was one of those moments. So perhaps we need some pressure. Maybe the human being is too lazy or is always choosing the, perhaps he thinks, most easiest way. But after a certain time, this easy way shows up not to be the easiest way, because has led you into a dead end, maybe. It sounds too too bad, but life in a community is much easier, and our whole life is based on community, isn't it? Otherwise, you should be a dentist, a doctor, a gardener. You cannot do everything on your own. We are not living like that anymore. So if you think like that, then you should always be happy about people in your area and new people, because new people means new abilities. And yeah, it's all a question of mind setting, I think.
I was reading about the radio work you've been doing. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I still do, but yeah, once a week for a local broadcasting station, which is only broadcasting using the Frisian language. Yeah, but that's interesting, because I'm speaking mainland Frisian and living on the mainland, but this broadcasting station is mainly listened to in the island of Föhr and maybe in the island of Amrum, which are the two main language centers, where the language is still quite strong compared to other regions of North Frisia. So the Isle of Skye or Lewis of the Gaelic language, something like that. And that's quite funny, because people from these islands tend to not understand our Frisian, which is funny. As I told you, if you grow up with so many languages, you have normally, it's something biological in your brain as a child, you got a language tolerance, it's called. So it's much easier for you to understand other languages if they are just tiny bit similar to your own language. You learn to, your brain, your head learn to fill the gaps, you know. And but it's not working on this island. And if you're not, never can speak Frisian, they will, come on, stop it, say it in German. Your Frisian is not bearable, and it's a very old-fashioned way of looking on other dialects. And but since this radio is running, I'm quite well known on these islands, and only because I'm doing my show using a different dialect. And it's again, at first, it's the same thing as what we told about just some minutes before. First it was something dividing, and now many made the experience, if we learn to understand Gary, then we can understand the whole Frisian stuff from the mainland. And can watch the theater and can watch, we made a cinema film a couple of years ago, which was quite successful in this area here, but using a different Frisian. And so now what was first recognized as something dividing is now used as something connecting. And using this special thing, which was dividing at the beginning, because it was different, is now just a new chance, a new thing making the horizon wider. And and there's of course water between me and the island of Firth. So it's kind of the same thing, just on a very smaller scale. Like, you know, with Yorkshire and Frisia, Germany, Britain, or Schleswig-Holstein, Britain. So you can minimize the whole thing, and you always find an even smaller scale. And this radio station is something quite similar, yeah. But I do not. Sometimes we do radio plays and things like that. And it's a nice. It's something in your head that at least I do not want to know how many people are listening to the show. I really do not want to know it. They are not millions, of course. But because I like the idea that there are enough to listen, as I think it's again something so connecting and a kind of center. If you... It's not... Of course you have to report about not centric issues. But if all people, even people from the left extreme wing and of the right extreme wing, but if they all listen to the same radio station, then we have a center. At least a kind of center, a tiny center, something where people can approach to in any way, and where we can communicate. We need ways of communication. I think that's the thing in Britain as well. The wings do not communicate with each other. And the centers, that's a political way of dealing with the upcoming extremism, is not talking with them. That's what they tried in Germany, at least. And it's not the same in Britain. I think Britain, the BBC and ITV are much more open-minded. But in public German television, they just said, okay, we just do not talk about them and we do not talk with them. Which is quite an issue if 40% are voting for them. So 40% of the people said, it's not my television anymore. So that's the wrong way. Why not use the center for dealing with it and for I personally believe if you communication is poison for extremism. You cannot stay extreme if you communicate with the other side every day. Communicate doesn't mean just talk and listen. You have to be open-minded you really have to listen and to be interested, of course, in what your opponent is saying to you. But of course you need the center as a relay station for communication. That's the point with the radio as well, yeah. Because, that's quite nice, only the language is the pole, or only the language is the rope binding them together, because of course they are right-wing Frisians and they are left-wing Frisians, and just by using German, they would never communicate. They do not listen to the same radio stations anymore. So if you're right-wing in Germany, you do not listen to public radio because you are living in theories and they are all liars and they're all paid by Trump and Epstein and or the other way around, they are all whatever. And you do not listen to each other. But by using the Frisian language, that's something very special because it's part of your personal identity. And I have listeners from different political parts where I absolutely do not agree. I'm totally center. I don't like both extreme sides. And but I have them as listeners. So you have to be conscious when talking and when moderating that maybe you are one of the few persons in Germany having the opportunity to using a radio station and having listeners from different political sides. And so do not use it for talking about cows and fishes. Use it for talking about community. And I hold a speech a couple of years. We have our national celebration or the national day is a beacon burning. It's a big bonfire on the 21st of February. And it's one of those old spring fires throughout the world. And you have a speech, of course, at the fire. It's a very rural thing, very old-fashioned. But and I still remember it because it was the last speech before the pandemic. And I always said, of course, yeah, we are floating away from each other in the 21st century community. But we have a medicine again. We have a common language. And, you know, we are all here at this fire. We meet here only people who are feeling themselves Frisian or having interested in the Frisian cultural heritage. So that's something in common. And we have a language. So why not use this language for an open-minded conversation, which would perhaps not be possible in German or any other language. But this is a very special community language, only owned by a certain very small community. And this is, if you like it or not, it's a connecting element. So even for those people who do not want to be connected, they are connected. And working for a radio broadcast as a very nice instrument for showing them that they are connected. You can discuss. It's a bit like, I like Jeremy Vine. I'm a big fan of Jeremy Vine. And I know there are many people hating him. I know. But he always tries to listen to both sides. And of course, you will always have one side who doesn't like him to invite the other side. But that's the only thing how it can work. So this is a center. Personally, I would say Jeremy Vine is a center, and while working, I always listen to BBC Radio 2 over the day. So it's a part of my everyday routine, listening those 1 or 2 hours to Jeremy Vine. And sometimes people are shouting at each other. And I think, well, what luck, it's only radio, and they are not in physics. But at least, I think people who are listening to this are knowing both sides. And there is a certain field of being connected. And you act as a community. Because discussion is an act of a community. You are not interested to discuss anything with anyone who you are totally not connected to. Why should I persuade someone who I will never meet again and who cannot act in any way influencing my personal life? So it's like talking to a stone. So it's important to talk within a community.